Patience. Let's see. All right, can I get a thumbs up from anyone if you can see my first slide? Okay, thank you, Priyanka. I saw a thumbs up from Hannah too. Thank you so much. I want to reiterate quickly before we really dive in that it would be so helpful for me if you're comfortable like participating a little bit. So if that means turning your video on and giving me some nods or even some no's, like I don't know what you're talking about, that's all really helpful for me because then I can say like, oh, okay, maybe I should go back or whatever. It's good feedback. But yeah, I'm really excited to start. So I guess we can just jump in. This workshop, as we already mentioned, but I'll repeat, is about overcoming imposter syndrome and building confidence. Oh, there we go. All right, so during this workshop, which is going to be about 45 minutes long, we're going to talk about 4 different things. The first 10 minutes is going to be about what imposter syndrome actually is. We're going to do a nice overview of imposter syndrome as a whole and dive into some causes. The second 10 minutes are going to be me talking about some of examples of imposter syndrome in my life. So maybe you'll identify with those and it should be really interesting. The next part is going to be about building your toolbox to handle obstacles of imposter syndrome that you might face. And then the last 15 minutes, which I'm really looking forward to, is going to be a breakout room discussion where hopefully you can connect with some really awesome other hackers in a virtual breakout room space and talk about imposter syndrome that you've experienced. So a little bit about me before we dive into the imposter syndrome material. Just quick logistics thing. Can you see me sharing this entire thing or can you see me sharing your faces also? Because I have a tab on the side.
We just see the slides.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks. But yeah, so my name is Madeline Nelson. I am a platform software engineer at Sprout Social. Platform is another word for backend, just if you're not familiar with that. I got my bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Notre Dame in 2017. So I'm still a recent grad, but not entry level anymore. And I'm based out of Chicago, Illinois. Anyone else from Chicago in the audience want to give a quick shout out? We can also connect during the breakout room. So I'm going to take that silence as a yes, which is awesome.
We had a couple yeses in the chat.
Oh, we got a couple yeses. Awesome. Woo. Very cool. Small world. So about the icons on here, the main languages that I focus on are Python and Java. Again, I'm a backend software engineer. I've done several volunteer experiences with Girls Who Code. I've loved every minute of it. Highly recommend if anyone's looking for, I don't know what it looks like during COVID, but different TAing opportunities and volunteers. It's a lot of fun. And last but not least, I play the trumpet. So a little fun fact, I played the trumpet in marching band for 4 years and made a lot of my best friends through that organization. All right. So what is imposter syndrome? I know we have a lot of people joining our workshop, which is amazing. And some of you are probably coming into this and already a little bit familiar with imposter syndrome. And some of you might be hearing about it for the very first time. So we're going to spend 10 minutes talking about what it actually is, and hopefully you'll find a way to connect to it that way. So let's start off with a definition. According to dictionary.com, great resource, imposter syndrome is anxiety or self-doubt that results from persistently undervaluing one's competence and active role in achieving success while falsely attributing one's accomplishments to luck or other external forces. So it's not always what people expect imposter syndrome to mean, but it's very true. Keywords here: self-doubt, undervaluing one's competence, attributing one's accomplishments to luck. And those will be themes throughout this presentation. So let's go through some statistics. Around 25 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from imposter syndrome. Around 70% of adults may experience imposter syndrome at least once in their lifetime, according to research. There have been a lot of studies done on imposter syndrome. And like I said a couple slides ago, I am a software engineer. I am not a psychologist. So I'm coming at this workshop from the perspective of someone who's experienced imposter syndrome, not as someone who's an expert in the psychology behind it. of which there is a lot, and there is a lot of great research out there. So if that's the side you're interested in, that's awesome. Feel free to browse around the internet for those really great resources and studies that have been done. But moral of the story in this slide, imposter syndrome is really common. I know when I first heard about imposter syndrome, I thought this was something that, only affected 1 or 2% of people, especially as one of the only women in my CS classes. I looked around and I assumed I was the only one that was experiencing this. So seeing these numbers it can be really validating. 25 to 30% of high achievers is a pretty high number. If you think about a quarter, a third of your friends, this is a really common thing. All right, so let's talk about some causes and effects, otherwise known as risk factors or symptoms. Some causes might be starting a new role, and that can look like a lot of things, right? It could mean starting college for the first time, a boot camp, or starting a new job, for example. Growing up in an environment that highly values achievement and or involves constant praise and criticism. When I was doing my research for this workshop, I found that part really, really interesting because I know I did grow up in an environment that highly values achievement. And I always thought of that as a really positive thing. And maybe it is. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not here to make recommendations on that front, but for better or for worse, that is a risk factor or a cause for imposter syndrome. And then finally, being part of a marginalized population group is also a big risk factor for imposter syndrome. These are all according to Medical News Today, in case anyone's looking for a source. Some effects or symptoms of imposter syndrome are holding yourself back or avoidance of seeking higher achievements because of fear of failure. Inability to recognize your accomplishments. I identify really strongly with that one. Attributing one's successes to outside factors or luck. And then a higher risk of burnout. And for those of you who might have experience with internships or co-ops, different jobs and professional experiences, burnout is a very real thing. And the fact that imposter syndrome can lead to burnout is, it's really eye-opening for me. All right, so now that we've gone through some background info on imposter syndrome, I wanted to throw a slide in here where we could really start talking about the fact that perfectionism isn't really a goal we should have. I know I was raised to think that perfectionism was a great trait and that was something that I was proud to be. But what I've learned throughout college and in my job since graduating is that some of the aspects that are associated with perfectionism were actually ended up holding me back. And as you might have heard, Reshma Saujani's TED Talk about bravery really emphasizes this and makes really great points that sometimes in situations when we are really high achieving, which is awesome, and we want to strive to be our best selves and we're really highly motivated, those are all great things, but bravery is sometimes a piece that's really missing. So if you're looking for a theme to channel throughout this entire workshop, or even the hackathon as a whole, or your CS classes, whatever it is, really try to think about bravery and the fact that if you're a perfectionist, sometimes that can mean that you beat yourself up over a mistake. And that's definitely not something we want to do. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and it's perfectly okay to extend some grace to yourself. So wanted to throw a slide in there for that. All right, before we jump into some real life examples, I am not monitoring the chat. I don't know if there's anything going on in there, but did anyone have any quick questions or anything they wanted to share? I want to try to make it interactive. I know it's kind of tricky on Zoom, but I saw Priyanka, you nodded a little bit. Did you want to share something that's going on in the chat? I don't know where my chat went.
You're all right. It should be available if you click on the 3 dots at the top right of your screen next to sharing, and then you click on the chat at the drop down. So at the top, in your sharing, there should be a toolbar for Zoom. Do you see that? You're muted.
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's mostly people just heavily agreeing with everything you're saying.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you, team. I feel so validated. I appreciate your patience and adaptability too. Amelia loves or has done Girls Who Code and love it. Yes, I love Girls Who Code. It's so awesome. So true. So true. Okay, great. Yeah, speaking in the chat is definitely okay. Great. Thanks for pointing that out. Oh, well, I guess we're moving forward. I'm gonna jump into some real life examples. And if some of you are, you're hearing these slides and you're like, okay, cool, but like, what does that actually look like in my life, right? Like, have I done that? Are you sure this is me? Like, I don't really know. Maybe these examples will help like piece together what it might look like in someone's life. So situation number one, I'm gonna go through 2 examples. Oh gosh, where do I start telling a story? So I went to Notre Dame for my undergrad. I know I already mentioned that. And at the time, which was a few years ago, the CS program was pretty small. It's since grown, but at the time we had about 100 undergrads studying computer science and computer engineering. We were in one nice little clump together. And of that group, we had about 30 women. So it's actually pretty close to the average number of like women in CS or women in tech as a whole. So in that sense, I guess it wasn't surprising, but we definitely felt singled out. We definitely felt like you noticed that we were like, oh, I'm the only, female in my group. I'm the only one around here that goes by she. So it definitely was an experience in that sense. But given that background, I wanted to share a little bit of a story with my friend Kelsey. So, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start here. So when I was a sophomore, I don't know how everyone's CS programs are different, but at Notre Dame, we had a year of prereqs, and every major essentially took the same classes, regardless of if you were in engineering or business or arts and letters. It really didn't matter. You all took those same classes. So our major classes, like computer science classes, started sophomore year. So this little background too. As a sophomore, I distinctly remember sitting in my CS classes. So at the time, that would have been programming paradigms. It would have been discrete math. Any discrete math fans? I actually really like discrete math. Fund comp, which ours is in C. I think they've changed it to C++. So anyway, it was really like foundational classes. And at the time, I was brand new to programming. I tried a little bit of CS in one elective I'd taken freshman year. And I loved it. And it was nothing like I thought it would be. And I was like, oh my God, wait, this is so cool. I thought it would be memorizing ones and zeros. And I didn't want to do that. I thought it would be sitting in my parents' basement in a hoodie and stealing NSA information, which, as you all know, it's actually not. Like, sure, there are a couple people out there that do that, but that's not what it means to be a programmer. That's not what it means to be a software engineer. So when I had that realization, and I was like, I love this thing, even though I'm new to it, I want to do this. I found myself in these CS classes surrounded by people who looked and acted like they knew exactly what they were doing. And that was a really tough situation to be in. I'm sure some people can probably empathize with that, right? Like, here I am sitting here literally not knowing what a for loop was at all. I'd never heard of it. I've never thought about the concept. And there are people who are raising their hand and saying, like, shouldn't we solve this problem with inheritance, like polymorphism, right? And I was like, I don't know what any of these words mean. So it was overwhelming. And I remember sitting in the back row because I was really self-conscious, and I was like, oh my God, how did I end up in this room? I don't know these words. I don't know what I'm doing. And I intentionally sat literally in the back corner because I was like, I don't want the professor to know that I don't know what I'm doing. And because I was in the back and the room was kind of like, I don't know what the word is, like elevated on different levels, you know what I mean, with the desks. So I could like see all the students and I could see all them raising their hand. And I was like, oh, wow, they all know what they're doing and I don't. And my friend, Kelsey, who we had some extracurriculars that we did together, so I knew her through that. She also was doing CS. And I remember just thinking, whenever we did projects together, I was like, wow, Kelsey really gets this stuff. Kelsey is one of those people that, sure, she did programming a little in high school, but like, she's a genius. She just gets it. Whenever we did a new concept and I was kind of like, what? Like, what's a dictionary? Why do we need it? I want to use arrays only, and I was kind of struggling with these new things. Kelsey just seemed like she understood all of it all the time. And so starting sophomore year, when I was in that situation, sitting in the back, And then throughout the next year and senior year too, or the beginning of it, I was just I admired Kelsey so much. I thought she had everything completely together. So over those 2 years too, I learned what imposter syndrome was. I realized that I definitely struggle with this. And over those 2 years, because our CS program at the time was pretty small, the students really got a lot more comfortable with each other. Like we had most of our core classes together. So we'd been working on projects together, and at senior year, we knew each other pretty well. And I was a lot more comfortable being vulnerable and raising my hand, risking being wrong, because I knew them at that point. And senior year, when I built up a little more confidence, I had a conversation with Kelsey, and I was like, look, Kelsey, like, I think you're a really great programmer. I've thought this for years, but I was too shy and I didn't say this to you. But you always get these concepts. You're so good at this. And here I am sitting here, like, I don't know how I could ever, have that kind of talent. And I was just like kind of throwing it all out there for the first time. And Kelsey was so shocked. She was like, what? And then she told me, first of all, she did not believe that about herself at all. And I was like, what are you talking about? You are so good at this. But then she proceeded to tell me a story about how for 2 years, she thought that I had it all figured out. And she was like, oh my gosh, we've been doing projects together. And the whole time I've been like, whoa, you get this concept. Like, you really get this. Like, just basically what I had been saying to her, she repeated back to me. And then we were kind of stuck there, and we're like, how is this even possible? Right? Like, we've been friends to some extent, not super close, but friends for years. And we'd both been separately literally in the same project, in the same room, struggling with imposter syndrome and admiring each other, when neither of us had the courage to step up and tell each other this situation. And so I tell you this story with 2 morals. Oh, sorry. There we go. 2 morals. Number 1, you are not the only one with imposter syndrome. And I know it's really scary. Trust me. I waited for, I said 3 in the slide. I exaggerated a little bit. I waited for 2 years to tell my CS friend that I thought she was a great programmer, which I totally maintain. She is a great programmer. And yeah, we shouldn't have waited. We would have felt a lot more part of a community, a lot more validated, and really just confident in our own computer science skills. Like, at the end of the day, now we're both software engineers at great companies. Like, life works out and it's fine. So number 1, talk about it. You're not alone in feeling this way. And number 2, it's okay if it takes you a little bit of time to build up that courage, but don't wait 2-3 years like I did. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes and let it out there. So story number 1, thank you for listening to my rant. Number 2, okay, I'm gonna drink a little bit of water because I'm scared I'm gonna lose my voice if I just talk perpetually this long. Does anyone, oh gosh, I don't have the chat. I see 27. Oh, you love that story? Thank you, friends. I feel validated. Cool, I'm gonna drink some water. Thank you for your patience. Let's continue. All right. I have another workshop out after this one. I would love to have you all there too. It's about Python. It should be fun. But thank you for the quick break. Situation number 2. So now I'm still imagine me senior year of college. This was about 4 years ago. I remember thinking and like really, really believing that my ultimate goal in life was to be a software engineer at Google. That's what I wanted, right? I had it all figured out and I was like, that's what I want. If I'm a software engineer at Google, then everyone will think I'm so smart. And for the rest of my life, I'll just be able to say, look, I'm a software engineer at Google. You should be my friend, right? And you should program with me because I'm pretty cool. So that I had built up this like image in my head that was what I wanted. And so that's a little preface. Now that I've been out of college a few years and I've had a couple different jobs, I realize like my goals have evolved and I'm a lot more clear with myself about what I really want. So I'm not saying this is currently my goal, but at the time I wanted to like set setting for you, because I'm sure some people can empathize with that. So I was a senior and I was like, I need a job. I should probably start applying to software engineering jobs in various places. And I applied to a lot of things, and I was very lucky in that process. But I remember when it came to applying to Google, it really was tough for me. I would sit on my futon in my dorm room and I was like, I really, really want to be a software engineer at Google, but I genuinely did not believe that I was capable of that. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't, right? And then I was like, well, I don't want to humiliate myself. I don't want to be in an interview and then have them ask me some really tough, like, merge to map question. I don't even know, like, merge some crazy thing. And I didn't want to be humiliated in that situation. I didn't want them to see the skills that I actually had or thought I didn't have. And so what I did was I really dug through the Google careers page, or their fancy website that they have. And I found a role that was entry level, that required a CS degree, but was only like half programming. And for the record, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those roles. I know a lot of people that went similar routes and they love them, like they're great. But I knew that I wanted to do programming. And so this role that I found, that I ended up applying to, really wasn't what I wanted to do at all. It was just something, it was kind of like an in-between where I thought maybe I could use my CS degree, but kind of like have a toe in one land, a toe in another, and almost get away with what I thought at the time was a lack of skills. And so I applied to it. I actually did not get it, which is fine. It is what it is. But looking back at the situation, I should have applied to the job that I wanted. And this is a great example of me downplaying my accomplishments and thinking every accomplishment that I have is because of luck, not because I'm a great software engineer that's very intelligent that earned this. And another one that I forgot, but another example of imposter syndrome. So moral of the story, number one, downplaying your accomplishments like I did. I was and am a great programmer. I'm very smart, and now I have practiced owning that. And at the time, somehow I didn't allow myself to see it. And so I downplayed my accomplishments literally just to myself. And that led to me not even applying for the job that I really wanted. So that happened. And number two, always apply, even if you think there's literally no chance. Just do it. Like, if you have the time and you have, the resources to do it, like a computer and everything, why not? Like, worst case, they reject you, right? That's fine. You can handle a rejection, so it's fine. So anyway, literally always apply. This is a nice feminist principle in itself. If there's a job that you want that has requirements, and say they list out like 10 things, right? Like, oh, you have a BS degree in computer science and you went to 10 hackathons. I don't know what the requirements are actually, now that I'm listing these, but the point is they have 10 requirements for this job and you meet like 2 of them, you should just apply. Most of the time, what companies do is they're really ambitious in what they list, and they actually are totally okay with potentially hiring someone that doesn't meet all of those requirements. Like, I tell you that as someone who's worked in these companies now and sees it from the other side. So what you should do is apply to it anyway. And if they are really specifically looking for a requirement, then that's okay. Like, it's really okay. There are lots of companies out there and lots of awesome jobs. So apply anyway. Great. Whew. Okay, let's move on to the next section. I'm going to do a quick time check. It is 9:25 in my time zone. Cool. Great. So let's build our toolbox. So now that we've talked about some causes and what imposter syndrome is, and then I've told you some examples from my life of times when imposter syndrome has held me back, what we're going to talk about now is building some strategies that you could potentially use in your life if you face imposter syndrome, that could help you out. So again, friendly reminder, I am not a psychologist. I don't have years of expertise studying imposter syndrome. I'm telling you these strategies because they're strategies that I've looked up over the years, that I've applied to my life, that have really helped me. Like I've noticed a difference because of them. So there are plenty more strategies in the world, and I highly encourage you to take a minute and Google them, see which one you really want to try. But again, I'm telling you these because I tried them and they worked really well for me. Are working. I don't have it all figured out, which is the next slide. I am not sharing this workshop with you because I have overcome imposter syndrome and I have all the answers. I have not. I still struggle with it. I've made a lot of progress, but it's something that I will still work on. I still put effort into making, like I check myself and see like, oh, did I make that decision because of imposter syndrome, or is it because it's actually a logical decision? So anyway, after this workshop, I do not expect you at all to just be done with imposter syndrome and say, oh, okay, I have some tools, now it's done, now it's over. No, it's something that you work on over time. It takes effort and it takes it's a growth process. So don't beat yourself up for not totally getting it right away. That is perfectly okay. It takes some time. Oh, okay, strategy number 1, we're gonna go through 5 if you wanna write them down. Strategy number 1, talk about it. Again, back to the Kelsey story. So talking about your experiences brings a sense of validation and solidarity. So some ideas for how you might implement this. Number 1, you could find an accountability buddy, which I have, and set regular check-in times to chat with them. So I have an accountability buddy. She's awesome. Her name is Margie. She's one of my coworkers. She's a software engineer also. And we literally did this. We talked about imposter syndrome one day and we were like, hey, we should do this together because this could be really helpful for us. So it's not super often. It's about once a month, but we set, a 15-minute meeting on our calendar that recurs once a month. And we're like, hey, how you doing? Did you take time off recently? You should do that, and just kind of check in with each other. That's really helpful. Number 2, you could attend networking events for underrepresented genders in tech. Definitely don't have to do this. Some people really don't enjoy that kind of event, and that's fine. I happen to really enjoy them because I'm so talkative and I can meet so many people. But at these events, I found that there's a lot of people there that have really similar experiences. And sometimes you'll work at a company or have an internship where you literally might be the only underrepresented gender in that group on your team, maybe in the whole engineering organization. And that can be really draining over time. So going to events like this once in a while, even if you're only there to meet people and chat about imposter syndrome, that is a very valid reason to go and put effort into that. So another idea, you don't have to, but if that's something you're interested in, good idea. Whew, okay, number 2, create a list of your strengths. It sounds simple, but oh my gosh, it has been so helpful for me. So write a list of your strengths and keep it somewhere where you'll actually read it every day. So some ideas for how you might implement this in your life. This number 1 is what I do. I have a browser tab open to a Google Doc that lists my strengths at the top. So if you're anything like me, you might have 100 tabs open in various windows, right? So they're organized, but there's still 100 tabs. And a couple times a day, at least, I go through and I'm like, I don't need all these tabs. And then I start closing the ones. I'm like, I don't need this one. I don't need this one. I don't need this one. And inevitably, I stumble upon my tab that has my strengths in it. And whenever I do that, I'm like, oh, right. What are my strengths? And here's a nice screenshot of the top. I didn't include all of them, but I have these 4 strengths that I took 15 minutes one day and I really reflected and I was like, I'm pretty great at starting initiatives. I'm great at getting things done, etc. And whenever I stumble upon this Google Doc, I read through them and I'm like, yeah, I am pretty cool. And then I just continue on deleting my other tabs, it doesn't take that long. It's just a friendly reminder, but it's really helpful. One of my best friends does something similar, but she does it on a sticky note. She likes writing on paper sometimes, or whatever you want to do. And special note, this list that you write of your strengths should not contain your weaknesses. This isn't like my strengths and weaknesses kind of job evaluation or anything. This is solely to be a friendly reminder every day that you are great and that you have great skills and that you have a lot of accomplishments. So there is a time and place to examine your weaknesses and areas for growth in life. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but for this, just have it be a list of your strengths. Okay. Strategy number 3, forgive yourself. So don't beat yourself up over mistakes or growth areas. You're only human. This one's pretty obvious, but it's helpful to have it in here. Some ideas for how you might implement this. Question your own thoughts. Does it make sense that you're a fraud given everything you know? So for me, this might be, you might think back to the story about when I didn't apply to Google, even though I knew that was my dream job. That's what I wanted to do. If I had really taken an extra 10 minutes and written out my accomplishments, honestly written them out, and I could have said, oh, I won a databases competition. You know, I got a CS degree from a great university. And, you know, if I had just done this, or, you know, I got an A on this really hard data structures project about open source, whatever it was. So like, if I had done that and then really thought about like, oh, who's this person that my classmate that I think is so qualified to work at Google, who's awesome. Do they really have more accomplishments than I do? Maybe yes, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't, that I'm not qualified, that I don't have like a really, really awesome resume and experience that I could bring to that. So anyway, the point is try to like think, actually like be more real with yourself. And if you find yourself beating yourself up and saying like, oh, I made a mistake, or, oh, I don't, whatever, just, I don't know how to articulate this. I don't think I articulated that very well. Try to just be mindful of what you think is the moral of that. And then number 2, if you make a mistake, set a strict time limit for reflecting on it, say like 20 minutes. And then after that time is up, forgive yourself and just like move on. Don't dwell on it for 5 years. And again, I don't have it all figured out. I struggle with this one a lot. If I make a mistake or I say something in a meeting and I'm like, oh, that I shouldn't have said that, I might think about that for way too long. So this is something that I'm working on right now, but it's generally a good rule of thumb. It also applies. I remember the first person who suggested that I try this was a soccer coach from like middle school. And they were like, oh, you know, if we lose a game, like there's a lot of great lessons learned, but don't spend your entire week thinking about all the mistakes you made, you know, like, yes, you can learn from them. And yes, you should be aware of them, but that's not it. You know, like you learned, you can move on. You should forgive yourself. And after that time, try your best to not really dwell on those mistakes and beat yourself up. Think about the future and start planning for other exciting things. Okay, strategy number 4. Oh, jumped ahead. Okay, great. Strategy number 4, accept praise. So imagine a situation. Wow, you did a really great job putting this event together. It was a huge success. So in, you know, your hypothetical situation, use an event of your choice, whatever you planned. If you're anything like me, you might have a tendency to use phrases like what you find on the left, which are examples of dismissing or redirecting praise. So again, you did a great job putting this event together. Oh my gosh, great job. My response, oh no, not really. I messed up on these 7 things, right? Another idea, oh, I did that one already. I really lucked out on this. Like the fact that it fit together, miracle. There's no way I could have planned all this so well. Or just, oh, it was no big deal. It only took 10 minutes, no big deal. All of those are examples of an embodiment of imposter syndrome, because what you're doing is you're taking this accomplishment that you earned, that you spent so much time on, and you're just throwing it away. You're saying, oh, no, it wasn't a big deal. No, don't, you know, and it takes some effort and time to really work on your skills of accepting praise. So again, don't beat yourself up for maybe not being the best at this right now. It's a process and that's okay. But there are some positive alternatives that if you notice yourself having a tendency of saying something on the left, what you could replace it with on the right. So let's go through some positive examples. Like, wow, you did such a great job of putting this event together. It was so successful. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's it. It's fine. You don't have to qualify it. You can just be like, yep, thank you. I appreciate it. It's if you're worried about not being humble, just say you appreciate it. Great. All right. Another option. Thanks. I worked really hard on it. You did work really hard on it, and that's great, and you should own that. And then it's okay. It's not bragging. And even if it is bragging, like, so what? It's fine. All right, number 3, thank you. I'm so glad we had a great turnout. So I was a little conflicted if I should put this one on here, because it is kind of redirecting it a little bit away from the praise to your success, but it is still saying thank you, right? You're not throwing away your praise. You're saying thank you. And you are acknowledging a metric that your effort put a lot of time into achieving. So think about it. And then small tidbit of advice, practice the hair flip. This doesn't have to be a literal hair flip. It can look different for different people. But hair flips are fun. And I don't know how to summarize this in an articulate way, but when I'm in a position and someone praises something that I do or an accomplishment that I have, and I feel myself starting to want to say something on the left, what I do instead is I literally do like a little hair flip. I'm just like, oh, right. And everyone, it's funny. It's fine. No one thinks I'm bragging. It's fine. So if that works for you, awesome. Maybe it's not a hair flip. Maybe you do something else. I don't know, but it's an idea. All right. Last strategy idea.
I'm sorry to interject, but I believe the masses are asking for a demo of the hair flip.
Oh,
it might just be me, but
yes, thank you. All right. My hair is so long because of COVID. I just let it grow, and then it like is so long. I need to donate it. Okay, ready? Can someone praise me?
You gave a really great talk today.
Thank you. Right. Thanks. No, I'm happy to do it. And it's like, it's just kind of, it's a lot and it's silly, right? Like, but I don't know, whatever. It works for me. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. Number 5, we're not done yet. Own your achievements, recognize and be proud of your achievements. Don't downplay them. So again, theme back to the Google example where I should have just applied. But there are some ideas on how you might implement this. 1, share recaps of your accomplishments on LinkedIn. This is similar to the networking suggestion from earlier. This isn't necessarily going to work for everyone. People have different comfort levels in different areas, and that's okay. Like if you don't want to post on LinkedIn ever, like that's totally up to you, and that's fine. I know, again, I'm super talkative and I like meeting people, so LinkedIn's a fun place for me to do these kind of things. And if I have a big accomplishment that I'm like, oh, I put a lot of time into this, I'm pretty great. Instead of keeping that to myself, I really try to be brave and I try to write some kind of like short thing. It's like, hey, I did this awesome thing, everyone. And it's validating. It's fun. It's an idea if you're looking for a way to kind of document that and celebrate your accomplishments. Another idea, keep an updated list of your accomplishments in a Google Doc. So I don't do this as well as I probably should, but similar to having a list of your strengths in a tab, you can, even in the same Google Doc, whatever, you can have a list of your accomplishments. And then if you're ever, really doubting your skills one day and you recognize, oh, I'm having a lot of these negative thoughts today, I really need a boost. You can just open that tab and see, oh, wait, yeah, this year I did this awesome project. I did a really great job on that. That was really hard, or whatever it is. So that's another one. I don't do a bow like this awesome GIF. I mean, maybe, I guess I could. It's not really my thing. But yeah, awesome. So those are the 5 strategies. In case you forgot them, we will review. Number 1, talk about it. Talk to Kelsey, right? Number 2, list your strengths. I have a Google Doc for it. It's great. 3, forgive yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. We literally all do it and it's fine. Number 4, accept praise. Can look like a lot of things. And then 5, own your accomplishments. All right, now we go into a discussion. What time is it? Oh, we're 4 minutes early. Oh my God, more time to discuss. Great. So I don't have the logistics for this. I think Priyanka or Hannah might, but I will just do a really quick summary of what I'm planning, like hoping for the discussion portion. And then maybe you guys can talk about like how we'll actually do it. So we will now somehow be placed into breakout rooms for small group discussions. There are about 130 of us, I think. Oh, there's fewer. Well, it's okay. We're really glad that you're still here if you are. Some breakout room norms before we do that. We want to respect others' experiences and experience discomfort. This is something we talk a lot about at Sprout Social, the company I work for. Sometimes discussions like this can be a little uncomfortable, and there's an extreme that isn't good, but there is like a healthy balance of being a little uncomfortable can sometimes lead to a lot of growth. So asking everyone to be respectful and open to being a little bit vulnerable is something that we really appreciate. And then during these discussions, we have 2 questions. So feel free to take a picture, jot these down, whatever you want to do. Number 1, share one example of a time when you experienced imposter syndrome and what was that like? Could be anything. Number 2, which toolbox strategy, remember the 5, resonated with you the most and why? Some of them might be like, you might be like, I'm never going to do that. That sounds terrible. And that's fine. But maybe one of them does seem doable, or like maybe you'll try it next week. So share that out too. So number 1, an example of a time you experienced imposter syndrome. Number 2, which toolbox strategy resonated with you? Great. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Priyanka, do you have a thing?
Hey, Madeline, I just wanted to interject. You've actually only got 3 minutes left before you have to hop over to your intro to Flask, which is, I just wanted to check you on that in case you weren't. You're muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the heads up. I appreciate that. I am totally fine if people want to do a discussion too. I can really quickly go through my final slide. Sorry about that timing. I must have gotten like the ending time wrong.
No, you're entirely fine. It's just we're on a different Zoom link, so you'll have to hop over and get prepared there.
Sounds good. Thank you. That's so helpful. But yeah, quickly, I was going to do this after the discussion, but this is fine. I would love to connect if anyone is thinking about imposter syndrome or anything, just want to talk about software engineering stuff. Happy to do that. This is my LinkedIn. It's Madeline Code, so it should be pretty easy to remember. And then this is my email. The slide's not going to be up for super long, so probably take a picture of it if you want. And then friendly advice, try to connect with people you meet at Technica. So by connect, I mean get their contact information, maybe find them on LinkedIn if they have one and connect with them there. I met some really awesome software engineers at hackathons as a student, and I still stay in touch with them. They work at different companies now, but it's cool because then I can talk a little bit about what life is like at their company and in their state. So it's really cool to have that network that you're building here. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you for coming. Do you want to do the discussion? Is it okay to continue this one, Priyanka, or is that like just not happening?
You definitely could. I can give you 5 or 6 minutes, but after that, because we have to sign out of the Zoom account, so I'll have to end the meeting and then start your next one.
Oh,
and you'll have to switch over. That's what it is. But you can take 5 or 6 minutes, because if the Flask workshop starts at 10, I believe, then you've got some time.
Okay, cool. Do you have access to the breakout room creation process?
Yeah, I could totally make some. Would you like, how many do you think you'd like?
So we have 75 people still with us because we are bumping up toward the end. Oh my gosh, my slides are on. So maybe 10 rooms. Is that okay?
That is entirely fine. I can tell you what I can do. I can make breakout rooms and then assign people automatically and let them just leave from there. So if you'd like to do a final sign off, let them discuss, and then they can just disperse whenever they feel like it.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad you're all here. I'm really flattered that you take the time to talk about imposter syndrome. I would love to connect, but it sounds like I have another thing to hop off to. So if you want to talk about Flask, come to our next workshop. All right. Thank you, everyone. Should I hop off, Priyanka? Just do that?
Entirely up to you. You could join one of the breakout rooms if you'd like, just for a few minutes before you have to hop off. I would recommend I give you until set like 9:50, 9:55, since you already know how the platform works.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to join a breakout room for 5 or 10 minutes, you're entirely welcome to do that.
I think I'm gonna take a 2-minute power nap. So
that is entirely all right as well. I highly approve.
Awesome. It was great work with you. Enjoy your breakout rooms.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone who's left, we'd love to have you stay and discuss if you'd like your experiences. So I'm not going to make 10, but I'll make about 5 or 6 breakout rooms because we lost a few people. But please feel free to stay and talk.